Hello and welcome to PetXI Interactive, the home of GCSE revision on the go. In this maths burst, I'm going to show you an amazing way of solving an equation. Remember, to solve an equation, you're trying to work out what the value of x is. The best way of doing this is to get x on its own. You want to end up with x equals something as your answer. There are a few different ways of doing this. You may have been taught a method already by your class teacher. We aren't going to be balancing anything out, we aren't going to be drawing any flow diagrams. Instead, we are going to use an approach called float and ping. Float and ping? You're probably wondering what on earth I'm talking about. But bear with me and you will see for yourself just how useful this approach can be. Okay, first we're going to start with the basics and slowly build up to equations that look rock hard. Okay guys, here's a really easy equation. Yeah, you were probably thinking, but I could do this in my head. And yeah, you probably could. But we're going to use float and ping to show you how it works. Right then, to get x on its own, what do we need to do? Well, we need to take this plus 4 and circle it, and then we float it to the other side of the equation. When it gets to the other side of the equation, it pings and the sign changes. Now, the important thing to remember is when you are moving plus numbers or minus numbers over to the other side, a plus number will turn into a minus number and a minus number will turn into a plus number. So what do we end up with? Well, the x is still on the left hand side, but now there is a minus 4 on the right hand side. So we get 9 minus 4, which equals 5. So x equals 5. That's the answer. X is on its own and it's equal to 5. So problem solved. Okay, right then, now for something a little harder. So, a bit trickier now because there's a fractiony bit on the left hand side. But we can still use float and ping, but this time it's a little different. Remember, we are trying to get x on its own again, but we need to float this divide by 2 bit over. But think, what's going to happen on the other side? Well, it was a divide by 2, so think of the opposite thing, which is times by 2. So, we get x equals 5 times 2, and 5 times 2 is 10, so x equals 10. That's our answer. Let's take it up a notch. So now we have a slightly trickier equation, but we can still use float and ping. This time though, we've got two things that we need to float, the plus 1 bit and the 3 bit before the x. So what do you reckon we need to float first? Well, hopefully you have picked the plus 1 bit, because we always have to deal with any plus or minus numbers first of all. So, we float the plus 1, which then becomes a minus 1 on the other side. Okay, so now we have 3x equals 15. The next thing to deal with is the 3. At the mo, the x is being multiplied by the 3. So when we float it over to the other side, we have to do the opposite. Hopefully, you are thinking divide by 3. Which is correct. So there we go. X is on its own, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. So the answer is x equals 5. Ta-da! Hopefully, this is all starting to make sense for you now. Just remember, float and ping. And do the opposite thing when you float something over. Okay, time to really take it to the next level. Whenever you get an equation like this, the very first thing you must do is deal with the brackets. Yes, that's right, deal with the brackets. Okay, cast your minds back to when we did that in our video on expanding brackets. And if you can't remember, go back and watch it. So, we expand the 4x minus 2 first. So, we can change the equation into 4x minus 8, which equals 20. Okay, so now we can use float and ping again, floating over the minus 8 first. So now we get 4x equals 28. Dealing with the 4 bit now, we get x equals 28 over 4, which equals 7. So x equals 7 is our answer. Right then, on to the trickiest equations of all now. This is where we have an x on both sides. Ooh, these are nasty. They can be quite tough using other methods, but now watch how easy it is using float and ping. Okay, remember we are trying to get x on its own. If we have an x on both sides, we need to combine them. But there's two ways we can do this. Now actually, it doesn't make any difference which one of these we do, as both ways will lead to the same answer. However, if you move the smaller amount of x, it will make things loads easier. Right, let's float the x over to the left-hand side. Don't forget that as it's a positive on the right, it will become a negative on the left. Now, combining the x parts, we end up with 2x plus 2 equals minus 10. We have now made the equation loads easier to solve. Think, we now float the plus 2 over, which leaves us with 2x equals minus 12. Then floating the 2 over, we get x equals minus 12 over 2. So x equals minus 6, which is our solution. See how awesome the float and ping method is? No equation will be too difficult if you can master this way of solving them. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon on another exciting instalment of PetXI Interactive Maths.